first argument. It is the argument from contingency. Let's have some fun here. This is one of my favorite arguments. We're going to go back to Leibniz. German philosopher G.W. Leibniz once said, "The first question which should rightly be asked is why is there something rather than nothing?" This was the most fundamental question in his view. That is, why does anything at all exist? Leibniz distinguished between two kinds of things that exist. Things that exist necessarily and things that exist contingently. Now in philosophy, when we say something is necessary, we mean, and here's a definition, something that has to exist by its own nature and does not depend on anything else for its existence. It has to exist and it can't fail to exist. Now we'll understand that better when we contrast that with contingent. What is contingent? Contingent is something that does not have to exist and depends on an external cause for its existence. If it is possible for something to not exist, and at one point it did not. Let's play with this for a second. If something exists necessarily, it can't begin. Hence, it is necessary. If I were to ask you, for example, truth is not invented, truth is discovered. So if I were to ask you, when did it become true that 2 plus 2 equals 4? What would you say?
So it's true.
It's always been true, necessarily. Right?
Okay.
It has necessarily been true. It's not as if, now contrast that with, let's say ravens are black. Why do we think ravens are black? Well, because every time we see a raven, it's black. Is it possible that we can maybe travel to some part of the jungle and find a raven that's not black?
Possibly.
Possible. Good. This part out of the notes, but I'll just mention it really quick. Possible world semantics is just basically a way of hypothetically thinking. Is there a world that God could have possibly created like this? So, possible world semantics. We live in a world that don't have that there's no unicorns, right? There's no horses with horns on their head. But we do live in a world that goats exist. Is it possible that God could have created a world in which unicorns existed instead of goats?
Of course.
Of course, right? Sure, it's possible. Now, is it possible that God could have created a universe in which 2 plus 2 equaled 5 instead of 4? No.
Based on the way we do numbers now.
Well, I would say, well, see, and that's the point. If it's necessary, it's not based on us, because even if everybody in the world today died, 2 plus 2 would still equal 4.
Right.
You get me? So it wouldn't make sense to say, 100 years from now, scientists will discover 2 plus 2 didn't equal 4. Or it's not as if I travel to the other side of the galaxy or the universe, I find 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4 here. It only equals 4 on Earth. These are things that are necessary. Are you with me? Now, something that is contingent is something that happens to exist but didn't have to exist. If you think about you, you are contingent. There's nothing necessary about you. If your parents would have met or had some intimate time on a different day, a different time, a different place, it's very possible you would have not been conceived. So you are not necessary, you are contingent. Ravens being black, contingent. Unicorns not existing and goats existing, contingent. 2 plus 2 equals 4, necessary. Necessary truths like red is a color, necessary truth. If it has a shape, it has a size. That's a necessary truth. Which means there is no possible world in which God could create that these things would not be true. Are you with me here? Any questions on that so far? Okay. So, what does it have to do with God? The question is, why does anything, Leibniz, the philosopher, said, why does anything at all exist? Why is there anything that exists? Here's why. Because if it's contingent, it does not have to exist. So if at one point something could not have existed, it probably didn't. Has this phone always existed, or does it have to exist? No, then probably at one point it didn't. Chairs, same thing. It probably didn't exist at one point, therefore it's not necessary. So the question is, why does anything at all exist? Well, if you only point to contingent things, that wouldn't prove, or that wouldn't give a reason why things exist. So in order for anything to exist, you need something that has always existed, something necessary. You see where I'm going? Let's give an analogy here. Let's say I needed to borrow some gas. And let's say I'm here and I go to person A and I say, do you have gas I could borrow? And he says, no, I don't. But you know what? Let me ask person B. I said, sure, I'll wait here. He goes to person B and says, person B, do you have any gas I can borrow? He goes, you know what? I don't. Let me ask person C. Let's say an hour later, he comes back to me and says, here, I got your gas. I say, thank you. Now, what does this imply? This implies that somewhere down the line, somebody asked someone for gas that didn't have to borrow it from someone else. Are you with me? That means there was someone who had gas and didn't have to borrow it. They just had it. Whether they dug it up themselves or whatever the case is, they had it. Now, let's contrast that with existence. We exist because we borrowed existence from our parents, right? Why do you exist? Because mom and dad got together. Why do they exist? Because their parents got together. So, existence was being passed along from generation to generation. Now, the analogy would still apply. If something exists right now and it is contingent, that means it got existence from something else. What's the point here? Just like with the gas analogy, there had to be a stopping point to where person Z has gas and didn't need to borrow it. The same would apply with existence. So if I exist and borrow existence from my parents and my parents from theirs, eventually there has to be a stopping point to where something existed that did not need to borrow existence. Are you with me? We call him God. Therefore, God is a necessary being, which means he's not contingent. Now, what does that imply? That means there is no possible world in which God does not exist. God exists necessarily, and it is literally impossible that God not exist. Why? Because anything that exists needs a necessary explanation. So if everything in the world is contingent, then apparently something has to be necessary, something non-contingent. So, with the analogy with the gas, you have people borrowing and lending. Eventually there has to be someone who doesn't borrow, he only lends. Any questions on that? There's got to be some.
I'm totally confused with that.
Okay, well, we'll try it again. What are you confused on?
The whole thing, just like...
Okay, let's do it with the notes here.
Okay.
Okay, it says in the analogy, I need to borrow some gas, I go to person A, etc., etc. It says, J.P. Morgan calls these people borrowing lenders, because no one can give gas unless they first borrow it from someone else. So if I eventually get gas, it would mean that somewhere down the line there was an owning lender, someone who has always owned it and did not need to borrow it. Do you grasp that so far? There's someone that has always owned it and did not need to borrow it. So if we talk about existence, Leibniz said that everything that exists has an explanation of its existence. If we got our existence from our parents, we are contingent. We are the borrowers and the lenders, because one day we could have kids. But using something contingent to explain something contingent is not an explanation. So there has to be a stopping point, an owning lender. That is to say, there has to be something that has always existed to give existence to everything else. I know it's a little bit deep in a sense, but again, the point is, let me have Ruben and Danny come up real quick. Just a little bit of a visual. So, let's just use three people. I need to borrow something. Let's say, okay, let's just use this water bottle. Hold that for me. I say, do you have any water? He says, no. He goes to him, do you have any water? Yes. So he gets the water from him. He gives it to me. Now I have water. Now, let's try it again. Can I have some water? Ask him. I'll never get water. Why? Because there wasn't a stopping point. Right? So in order for me to be here, eventually somewhere, even if it's 20 people down the line, somewhere it has to stop in order for me to be here. Well, I'm here, which would imply somewhere down the line there was a stopping point to existence. Are you with me? Because if I say I got existence from my parents, and then from their parents, when you keep going back, if you don't ever stop, you'll never get here. Well, I am here, so where did it stop? You with me? Thank you, guys. Where did it stop? God. Now, is that a cop-out? No. Because we'll go into another argument that shows that, yeah, there is something beyond space, time, and matter. So we say that God is a necessary being. That is to say, his non-existence is impossible. It is the sufficient reason for its own existence, and as well for every other contingent thing. So in this argument, it shows that God's non-existence is logically impossible. Therefore, he must exist. He is logically necessary in his being. That is to say, there is no possible world in which God does not exist. So that means he is necessary logically and metaphysically, meaning for anything physical, for anything to exist at all, he needs to exist. J.P. Moreland said, if God did not exist, nothing would exist because everything owes its existence to God in one way or another. Therefore, in this argument, we can deduce a being, God, that is self-existent, logically and metaphysically necessary being. And remember, a necessary being cannot not exist and cannot lose what it has never been given. So people say, where did God come from? Well, nowhere, because no one gave him existence, so he can't lose it. You can't lose what you haven't been given. If you've always owned it, you'll always have it. So why can't God have a beginning? Well, because no one gave him a beginning. Because no one gave him existence. He's always had it, and he can't lose what no one gave him. Therefore, he's necessary. What people say, an objection people might say is, why can't the universe be necessary instead of God? Well, the burden of proof would be on them. You would ask them to explain. Well, why do you think the universe is necessary? What is necessary about it? Because it's very possible that we can live in a world in which the earth look different, right? There's nothing necessary. Just like ravens are black, but they could be some other color, the earth could have other people. I mean, let's say your parents didn't meet. You're contingent. Let's say something else in history took another turn. This universe isn't necessary. There's nothing necessary about the laws of the laws in chemistry that we have now. There's nothing necessary about it. So response would be, there's nothing necessary about the universe existing, but because it could have failed to exist. Even on our view, thought experiment, possible world semantic experiment. Here's a little test. If God didn't create the universe, could he have still been a creator?
Yes.
Why?
He's a beginning.
Say again?
He's a beginning.
He's a beginning? I'm sorry?
But he didn't create anything.
So you say yes because what?
He's a beginning.
Because he's a beginning? Someone said?
He could have created something else.
Okay.
Chose not to.
Chose not to. So if he didn't create the universe, how could he still be a creator?
He couldn't because he didn't create anything.
He could have created something else other than a universe.
Okay, good. So here's what we're being through so far. Someone's saying, well, if now let's go back to the worldview thinking. I only said, what if he didn't create the universe? So if you say, well, he's not a creator because he didn't create the universe, you're falling under the worldview of naturalism. Only the physical world exists. So whether you realize it or not, and that's okay, that's what our society's taught us. But she said something interesting. Well, what if he would have created something else? So let me ask that question. Could God create something besides the universe?
Yes.
What? Spirits. God could have created a world in which only angels existed, and there'd be no universe, and he would still be a creator, and there'd be nothing physical at all.
And in the Bible it says in the beginning he created, but that was the beginning of the universe. So he was already before all that.
We'll probably get into that in the next argument that we go over, but without the universe there was no time. And that's a sticky part right there in itself. But yes, without the universe it was God. And you don't want to say that there was necessarily nothing. It was just God existing. There was always something. There's always been something. God existed. Yes, sir.
Or in the Bible where it says the things that were created by the things that were unseen. So basically, like when he was in existence, basically everything that we see right here is created by something that we cannot see. So basically, like
The creator of the seen and the unseen.
He created everything.
But that wasn't the question. You asked if he created the universe.
Without the universe. If he had not created the universe, could he still be a creator? And the conclusion we came to is yes, because the universe is not the only thing that is created. We have angels, we have demons, the spirit realm. It's not physical. It doesn't take up space, but it's still creation. So you would still have time and you would still have creation. You just want to have a physical creation. Because we aren't purely physical beings. When your body dies, you still exist.
Yeah.
So if God wouldn't have created the universe for us, because he still could have created angels and still been a creator and still have time and still have things interacting. It just wouldn't be physical.